Hey everyone, my name's Ricardo, Community Manager at Visa for the Visa Developer Program, and this is Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean Newton. I'm a product manager with the Visa Developer Program.
And we are super excited to kick off the Visa Coder series today, getting started with Visa Developer. So let's walk you through a little bit what you're going to go over. We'll start with Visa Developer. What is it all about? We'll then go into getting started, so walking you through registration and creating a sample project. And then we'll even show you how to test your sample app and making that first API call. But before I hand it over to Sean to start, I just want to remind everyone that we will have a Q&A session at the very end. You should have a Q&A option on your console. Feel free to send in questions. I'll be monitoring it, and if I can answer them directly, I will do so. And if you want to ask Sean or Pooja, who would join us in a minute, a question directly, we can wait until the end. As far as a recording, this will be available after the webinar. We are recording this, and we will also share all the slides and provide any resources and links that we go over today. So be on the lookout for that. The last thing I wanted to go over is actually a really exciting thing that we're going to do. Throughout the webinar, we are going to have 3 challenges. So I'll be announcing those challenges throughout the webinar, and we have 4 giveaways to give away. One is Visa Developer Hoodie, branded yellow Visa Developer Hoodie. We'll give that for each of the challenge winners. Now, if you submit the correct answer for all of the challenges, then we'll put you in a drawing to win. Let's see here, the Amazon Echo. So you could potentially go home with a hoodie, or your home, you could potentially receive a hoodie and an Echo. So just make sure that you read our terms and conditions below, and that you're eligible to get one of these giveaways. Let's go to the first challenge. The first challenge is, how many payment APIs does the Visa Developer Platform have? Payment here being very important. Make sure that you email your answer to visadeveloper@visa.com. I'll be monitoring that, and again, you have until 12:15 Pacific time to submit your answers. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Sean.
All right. So, what is the exact vision of Visa Developer? So, let's kind of go through that.
No,
Oh,
no, you have to start over.
oh, start over. Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. Looks like we had a little bit of a technical hiccup. All right. So, again, what is this Visa Developer Center, and what are our products all about, essentially, right? So, our products are, when you think Visa, you think swipe, dip, or tap to perform a credit card transaction or an authorization. Right? Our products are centered around 3 parts of the auth. We have pre-auth products like loyalty and data, which helps merchants provide just-in-time incentives to cardholders. We have ATM Locator, which helps consumers find nearby ATMs. We have in-auth products, right, which help facilitate secure payments, such as Visa Direct, which helps to facilitate peer-to-peer payments. We have consumer transaction controls, which places controls into the hands of the consumer around their payment instruments. And we have VRM, which is Visa Risk Manager, which provides basically a risk score, right, to not issuers but to acquirers that tells them whether or not they should actually approve or decline an actual transaction. Lastly, we have post-auth products, and one of our post-auth products would be Visa Transaction Alerts. So anyone who has actually received like an SMS notification or an email notification on their phone or in their email, specifying that a transaction was either accepted or declined, right, has actually likely, for their Visa card, has likely seen how Visa Transaction Alerts work. So when you actually are developing your new application or your new solution, you have a vast array of sort of digital products that you can choose from, right? Those digital products include some of your favorite social platforms. It also includes some of your favorite mobile platforms, as you can see over to the right. And it includes some of your favorite shopping platforms. And what Visa aims to be is the payment platform of choice for the digital ecosystem. So the question then is how do you find us? Well, that's actually pretty easy. So you can either just type in, right, developer.visa.com into the URL, or I'll show you exactly how to find us and essentially how easy it is to get started with Visa Developer Center. So let's go. And let's start where most searches start, right? Let's start with Google. And just type in Visa Developer. We're the first one that pops up. And other than that, you can type in Visa APIs, will also pop up at the top, and that'll take you directly into Visa Developer Center. When you get to Visa Developer Center, you basically get to pick our products based on the type of persona that you're trying to satisfy, right? So if you're looking for products that are catered towards issuers, acquirers, merchants, or ISVs, essentially you can select those here, or you can just select View All. When you click View All, you're actually presented with a page that shows you the vast array and the vast portfolio of Visa's digital products and services all in one shot. But you can also still basically select it based upon the actual persona that you're looking for. So issuer acquirers, again, merchants, or independent software vendors. And it's actually really, really easy to get started. So your registration process is pretty straightforward, but once you are ready to go, right, you quickly come here, you sign in, and once you sign in, you'll have access to the app. Now we'll go over this again a little bit later, but I want to take you through one of these sort of exciting use cases that we have and that we thought up as far as how Visa can be used, right, to basically enable this digital ecosystem. Okay. Okay. So I want you to imagine yourself in a day in the life of the connected life, right? And we're kind of headed this way. So most people are familiar with terms like IoT, which is the Internet of Things, and all the sensors that are involved with that as far as enabling a digitally connected world. And I want you to imagine yourself in a world where essentially most people, again, are familiar with smartphones and smart watches, but we are also sort of on the cusp of developing really, really smart homes and smart cars. So imagine yourself in the world where these devices are kind of well developed, right, which we're not too far off from today. And imagine that all these devices can be payment enabled, right? And if we walk through essentially the day in the life of a connected user, let's say that our user is asleep at night. And while he's asleep at night, right, the actual utility bills come into the home. So let's say your electric bill comes in and the gas bill comes in. Now while he's sound asleep, the home essentially looks at that bill, compares the charges, and compares the charges against essentially its own metering, and verifies that the charges are accurate, and it tenders payment for him, right, or her. So essentially, they're not bothered with the actually having to make the payment. They've authorized the home to make the payment for them. When he gets up at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and perhaps while he's brushing his teeth or while she's brushing her teeth, they're presented with a list of exactly to-dos for the day. What they know for the day is that at about 9 a.m., there's a pool cleaning that's going to happen at the home. They know that about 1 o'clock that there will be a oil change service agent who's going to come and actually change the oil on his vehicle while they are at the office. And they know that their maintenance man may show up at the home at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon to perform maintenance, say, on the water heater. So our user basically agrees to all this, finishes, and leaves for work. They leave for work, the house locks down, and the house is in lockdown mode, but it's a smart home, so it's ready to basically allow access for the specific users throughout the day. So it's about 9 o'clock in the morning, our pool boy shows up. Right? Shows up, the home knows that this is already scheduled and allows them in. And essentially, he comes in, he cleans up the pool, and on his way out, he taps for his payment. The home is a smart home again, right? So it verifies and makes sure the pool was appropriately cleaned, and it tenders payment on behalf of the owner. The owner didn't have to be there to actually transact it. At about 1 o'clock, let's say that the user is at the office and they are in the middle of a meeting, so they don't have time necessarily to go outside. And the oil change service agent shows up, and again, the car knows that oil has been scheduled for the day, so it allows access to the vehicle, based upon user, and only to certain parts of it. So this guy can't necessarily turn the car on or drive away with it. He's only allowed to maybe pop the hood and change the oil. Once he's done, he taps to finish, and once that happens, the car does some diagnostic, verifies that the oil change service was performed to satisfaction, and the car tenders payment on behalf of the user. User, again, doesn't necessarily have to be there. At about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, again, our main user is still at work, and the maintenance man shows up, and now they need access inside the home. So the home unlocks the appropriate doors, allows them in. You've got things like smart cameras and motion sensors that can make sure that the owner is staying on track, making sure that they are only going to the designated places of the home. They go in, they perform the service, and again, the home performs some type of a diagnostic. Once that diagnosis is complete, verifies it, tenders payment, right, to the maintenance guy, and then locks back down and waits for the primary user to come back home. Now it's about 4 o'clock. We've had a long day at work. Our user is essentially ready to take off, and he or she gets into their car, and then they turn it over, and they get a notification of a loyalty or an offer program that's at the local Shell or gas station, right? Because they go to this gas station all the time. That if they stop by, they need gasoline. And if they stop by, they'll get a 5% discount. So they can choose to use that at this point in time or not. So in a sense, after that, the guy goes home or he or she goes home, and essentially you've completed the life cycle and the day in the life of a connected life, right? And this is what IoT and essentially what payment platforms like Visa are hoping to enable. And if you look at the use cases, we've covered several products that could possibly be used in this use case, right? When it comes to basically smart homes and smart devices, those could be enabled by things like Visa token services, where we tokenize those homes and tokenize those vehicles, no different than we tokenize phones and we tokenize watches. When we talk about payments and tendering, we talk about things like Visa Direct, which can push payments, right, or have merchants particularly pull payments, right, from account to account. When we talk about the notification services, right, we're talking about basically alerts and notifications that could go to the owner or to the primary user whenever these transactions take place. And when we talk about offers, we have Visa's offers platform, right, which also allows merchants to provide just-in-time offers to their clientele and to cardholders to incentivize them to come and make a purchase. All right, with that, I think it's time for challenge number 2.
All right, and before we go to the challenge number 2, I just wanted to let everyone know that we were able to fix the audio and video issue, and Sean actually started over, so you didn't miss anything. And again, we're gonna send the recordings out, so if you're just joining us now, you'll be able to watch this over and over and over again. So challenge number 2, find the error, fix the solution, and send it in. So go to that bit.ly, which will take you to our community page. There is a form question that has a test use case attached to it. Read through that, read through our documentation. Again, find the error, fix it, and send it over to visadeveloper@visa.com. For anyone who just joined and is wondering what are these challenges all about, I'm going to bring up the slide just to remind you. We will be doing 3 challenges during this webinar. For each challenge, you could win or you can receive a Visa Developer hoodie. Everyone that submits a correct answer will be put in a drawing for a Visa Developer hoodie. If you submit a correct answer for all challenges, then you will also be put into a drawing for the Amazon Echo. So the first challenge, how many payment APIs does the Visa Developer Platform have? And the second challenge, find the error, fix the solution, and send. I'll leave this here for about 10 more seconds if you want to screenshot or copy down that bit.ly. Again, you can find this. It'll be the first form question on our community page, community.developer.visa.com. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right. Okay, so let's get started. Let's just get familiar a little bit with our site here. So like I stopped before, we went to the sign-in page. So we're going to quickly sign in and just show you how easy it is to find a few things on the site, okay? I enter my email address, I enter my password. And once I log in, I'm basically taken right into my application dashboard, right? And this is essentially where all of your projects will be whenever you want to create what we call an application, or what some of you might refer to as an actual project, right? When we create that, you basically click create a new application. You type in the name of it. You can give some brief description there if you want. And we will pick a couple of products here to add to it. We'll pick consumer transaction controls, and we'll pick Visa Direct. Right. Let's say create. Continue. Okay. You'll be prompted to download a copy of your certificate and private key, which I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll just confirm it and continue. Okay. Once you do that, you'll land right onto your application console. You'll see the name of your application at the top, webinar test application, as I've so named it. The environment that you're in is in the sandbox, so essentially this is the play area where many of our APIs are made available for you to basically test out. And you land directly onto the Keys and APIs tab, which shows you essentially your application credentials, the certificates that you need potentially to download, and also the list of all the APIs and the status of those APIs that have been included with the products that you've selected. You can easily navigate to the documentation from there to get the actual API reference guide, which shows you what the payloads and everything look like for each one of the APIs. You can also go to the test data page, which provides you with specific test data that can be used when testing these APIs in the sandbox. But also many of you would be interested in the sample code section of this, right? So if you go to the sample code, there's a couple of ways to get sample code to download for VDP. One way is actually to create the application and come in, and once you create it, you can come directly to the sample code page, right? And here we have it in many of the most common languages that are out there that many of you are coding in today: PHP, Ruby, Node, Java, C#, and Python. There's another way to get here as well, and that's you can go directly to GitHub. This link is provided here as well as on the home page, where you can quickly go to GitHub and actually download the sample code as well. All right, and with that, I think we can hand it over so we can give it a shot of actually creating our first application, and for that, Pooja is going to take over.
Hi everybody, I'm Pooja. I work as a QA engineer in Visa Developer Platform. So I'm going to show you how to make an API call. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I think it's already shared, right? Okay. Okay. So first we will go over the Get Started guide on Visa Developer Platform. So go to developer.visa.com and click on the products link here. Click on the products link here and click Get Started. So this section tells you, gives you all the details of how to create a certificate signing request and get a certificate, credentials, and make a sample test API call. So I'm going to take you down to, there are multiple ways of generating the CSR. The common ways listed on our Get Started guide are the OpenSSL method and the Java Key Store method. So I'm taking you right now to the most popular method, which is the Java Key Store method. You could also take a look at the OpenSSL method, which is listed here. So the first step would be to generate a private key. All the key tool commands are listed here. So generate the private key using this command, and then go ahead and create the certificate signing request using the next command. Once you have the certificate signing request, use it in the app which you are creating. So this particular app used a default. Certificate signing request. So what you could do is you could come back, click on create a new app, say create a test app, select your APIs in the same way, and instead of using the default CSR, say submit my own CSR, browse and get to the CSR which you have just created using the steps on the guide. So this is going to create a similar app. Let me take you to the app quickly and tell you what you need from the app to actually make a call. So sign out and get to another login which has some sample apps created. Okay, so this is a sample app for Visa Direct and CTC. So what you need to make your API call, primary two important things. One is the user ID, the other is the password, and then you need the bunch of certificates which we have provided to you. The first one is the Visa Developer Platform certificate or the root certificate. Then you may optionally need the GeoTrust certificate. It is optional on some of the machines. And then you definitely need the third certificate, which is your application certificate. So with these three certificates, you will need to follow the next set of commands on the getting started guide again. So just quickly take you there. Okay, so the commands here tell you how to actually chain the three certificates on your app and create a final certificate which you can use on your tool. So use these two commands to chain the root certificate and the application specific certificate. So with this, you have a final client certificate ready for your first call. So there are multiple test tools which you can use to make the REST API calls. SoapUI is one of the popular tools. The next part of this guide tells you the version of SoapUI you could use. You could use 5.1.3 as mentioned here, or even a higher version. And upload your certificate, create a REST project first, then go to the preferences of this tool, upload the client key store JKs which you just created. And once you do that, as shown in the third step, then what you would all you would need to do is create a REST project, and to test connectivity, whether your certificate and keys on your app are correct, you can do a sample test call which we call hello world, which is you can just say sandbox.api.visa.com/vdp/hello world. So this is a test call which tells you everything is good with your app, your certificate, and your credentials. So add in the this is a simple get call. So just set this up as shown in this get started guide, and add in a authorization. This is a basic auth that you need. This is nothing but the keys which you see on the app. So the user ID, password which you just saw on the app is your basic auth. And upload the certificate as I told you earlier, and then just hit the play button. That should give you a 200 response, which means that your keys and your certificate are all good. So if this is working, the next step would be to use the sample code shown on our app. I'm going to show you execution of the sample code in 2 languages today. So what I've done here is I have downloaded the Java sample code and the Python sample code. So when you download the sample code from our application, you would get a folder something like this. So most of the steps are automated. I'll just quickly show you a couple of things which you need to do before you can run this. So you at this point of time, you should already have your app created, as well as your certificate created and the credentials handy. So go into the Java folder, go to source, go to test, go to resources, and there you have a configuration. So in the configuration properties, you would already have the URL set as sandbox.api.visa.com. This is our test area, test URL. Then you have the user ID password also auto-populated from your app. The app from wherever you have downloaded the sample code, that app's user ID password will already be automatically populated here. What you do need to fill in is the key store path. So here this is my key store path. So this you would point to obviously wherever your key store is located on your machine, and the key store password, the password of your private key, which could be the same most of the times. Here I am actually doing a Visa Direct API call and a VCTC call. Visa Direct call and a VCTC call. So the for VCTC, there is a test pan which you need to provide. I'll quickly show you where you get this from. From the app which you created, along with the credential certificate and the credential certificates, and the sample code, you also get test data from us. So in the test data, we actually tell you the data which you can use for the different payload parameters. So for CTC, you would actually have to go to the API and then get the primary account number from here. So this would be all the guidelines of where to get the test data from will also be there in the configuration properties. So I have just overwritten this with the card number here, but when you get to download the sample code, you will actually see the instruction here on where you can get this test data. So once you have this configuration file filled up, and that's all you need, I'm going to execute this from command line and show you how this works. So one prerequisite is having Maven installed, and also do go through the README, because this calls out most of the prereqs that you may need before you execute this. So the README actually tells you about Maven installation and also creation of the certificate, the private key, both private key and your app certificate, both in the OpenSSL way as well as in the Java key store way. It also tells you about filling the config.properties, which I just showed you, and finally the command to actually run this test. So I'm going to quickly run this and show you how the sample code works. Okay, so I just started this test. What this is going to do is this is going to call some of the APIs of Visa Direct and CTC and give you the request response payloads as well. So the tests have just started. It's trying to make a register a card request. This is a CTC. So this test is pretty quick. As you see right now, it's executing, and it actually gave you all the so let me show you one of the sample request response. So this call was made for watchlist inquiry. This is one of the Visa Direct APIs. So this is the request body which was used in the call, and this is the response. It was successful. So it gives you the response HTTP code, it gives you the response headers, and it also gives you the response body. So this doesn't have all the calls, but it pretty much has most of the important Visa Direct and CTC calls which you need to test out your sample code. So this was Java. I'll do a similar execution on Python. So you can go over the code in details. You can just download and look over the code and make any changes you need locally. So I'm also going to execute Python now. So for Python, we are actually using nose tests for executing this. So similar to what I showed you in Java, I had Python sample code downloaded locally. The steps are very much similar, except that in Python we don't need to use a key store. It's comparatively much simpler. All you need to do is from your app just download the third certificate, which is your app specific certificate. It will get downloaded as a cert.pem, and what you have to do is go into this security folder and put the cert.pem and the private key. So this is your application cert, and this is your private key. So place both these PEM files, no chaining required, in this security folder. Come back to VDP Python. Come back to the VDP Python folder and go to the Visa folder here. Go to the configuration settings. Just like I showed you in Java, there was a configuration settings. You have a configuration settings in the Python project as well. So similar to what you saw there, the user ID password from the application would be auto-populated here. The cert is the cert and the key. This is your application cert and your private key. Just point it to the path of the security folder, as I just showed you. The test pan, again, as you saw in the previous Java project, just give the test pan from the application. So there would be explicit guidelines here on where to pick the test pan from. You don't need to change the URL. It is already pointed to the sandbox URL which you need to use. So this is the configuration file of the Python project, and as I told you, we are going to use nose tests for executing this. Before that, let me show you the README guide for the Python project. This tells you the prerequisites for executing the Python project. You would need to install nose, and we've given you the commands for that. So just follow the sequence of commands here, and this has instructions for both Windows and Mac users. And after that, after you have installed nose, just go to the folder wherever you have the Python project and say nose test. So I'm going to execute this as well from command line with nose tests. The Python project only has CTC calls, so this is going to just execute the Visa Consumer Transaction Control APIs. So that's it. It had 3 tests in it, and all the 3 were successful. The response pattern is similar. It logs the request, response headers, and the actual response body. So this is about the Python project execution and the Java project execution. You could similarly use the other languages use a similar kind of format. You will have a configuration file and you'll have a README guide on it, and it should be simple enough to execute it. So this is about the API calls, and
Awesome.
okay.
Thank you, Pooja.
All right. Do we have another challenge?
We do.
We do.
All right. So just taking a quick break here, let's show the final challenge. The final challenge challenges you to create a P2P payments app in Node.js using Visa Direct. The app should take the amount and card number of the beneficiary and make the transfer. You've learned a little bit about registering and creating that sample app and selecting the API. So take some time to look through Visa Direct and figure out how you can do this challenge. Once you submit this, send the app name and the email that you used to submit your app to visadeveloper@visa.com. This is the last challenge of the webinar. I'll just go back to the first one and the second one as a reminder for anyone that joined a little late. First challenge was, how many payment APIs does the Visa Developer Platform have? Figure that out. Email us the answer to visadeveloper@visa.com. The second challenge, find the error, fix the solution, and send. If you go to that bit.ly, which is our forum, our community forum, you'll find a test use case in there, zip file. Check it out. Check out the documentation, find the error, fix it, and send us the solution to visa.developer@visa.com. And then again, the last one, challenge 3, create a P2P payments app in Node.js using Visa Direct. And email that over to visa.developer@visa.com. We have an Amazon Echo for anyone who submits all 3 correctly, and we have hoodies for anyone that submits one of the challenges will be put in a raffle. Sean, anything else?
Awesome. Well, looking forward to you guys' responses.
Okay, cool. So I guess should we do some Q&A?
I think so.
All right, let's open that up. All right, so let's see here. Renzo is asking, do you have some API that notifies credit card transactions?
Yes, that we do. So I think what you're talking about is something like Visa transaction alerts, which we do have. We're essentially based on credit card transactions. And again, so when you say notified credit card transactions, this is something that your bank would have to opt into for you. So depending on who you bank with, they would enable that for the actual credit card that you have. So when you use it, essentially the idea is, of course, if you were to submit a transaction, right? If it was declined or if it was authorized, you would basically get that notification on the device of your choice. It could be email, it could be SMS, but that would be our Visa Transaction Alerts API.
Cool. Okay. Next question. This is Dan. At our company, we issue accounts cards, have processor and FI relationship. It's a program much like Bucks, but it's not Bucks, in that it provides a parent account and a child account. Can this API suite provide us an alternative to the traditional FI processor PM construct?
That's a really, really good question. So one, we have a vast array of APIs on Visa Developer, but as far as something that can replace this particular construct, I would refer to you to documentation on our page. I don't think that we have something that actually does that. Our stuff is basically, again, more so involving the actual authorization messages themselves and then the risk sort of scoring around those things. So if you look at the APIs that we have there, again, like I mentioned earlier, we have something like Visa Direct for peer-to-peer transfers. We have things like Visa transaction alerts, like someone asked about before, which is kind of the post-auth sort of flow, where essentially we're sending alerts and notifications to individual users based upon what your issuer actually opted into for you. We have consumer transaction controls, right, which we talked about in the earlier use case, which allows you to place basically consumer controls around the actual payment instrument. To give you an example, imagine being able to specify for your credit card whether or not what time of day it actually should be used. Imagine having a child and issuing that card to them, or giving that card to them, and specifying where they can actually use that card. So we have things like that. So I would refer you to documentation, but I think for that particular use case, I think that is not something we have.
Okay. Yep. Jorge, where can I find the requirements to become an approved Visa independent software vendor?
I would say email us at developer@visa.com, and someone should be able to get back to you with that specific information to partner with Visa for that.
All right, Paul, would you please briefly enumerate the steps in building an e-wallet where I can save my credit card and pay in a store that accepts my e-wallet, like use this API, get your wallet done and tested, get verified by Visa, call a bank to get a contract?
That's a very detailed question. Can you scroll down?
Yeah.
E-wallet. Where can I save my credit card? Let me read this one more time. Where can I save my credit card and pay in a store that accepts my e-wallet? Like use this API, get your wallet done and tested, get verified by Visa, and call back to get a contract. I'd almost say, why do that when you can just use Visa checkout? So I would promote our Visa checkout application. Maybe check out the documentation for Visa checkout, which essentially is sort of a wallet for Visa cards and other cards and payment instruments. And if that doesn't answer, I would definitely say email us at developer@visa.com, and we should be able to help you out with that.
All right. David is asking about some other programming languages. You could see C, C++, Swift, Objective-C for iOS development.
What about Swift Objective-C for iOS development? So for that,
it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. So it's coming in the future. One of our lead developers is telling me now that essentially this is something we are working on. We do not have this today, but it is something that is in the pipeline for the future.
Yeah.
So great question.
Yeah, we'll make sure to announce that once it's ready to go for everyone to use. How can we delete an app?
You can delete an app. I can actually show you how to do that. I can walk you through the steps, but essentially if you go into the app settings page, there should be a button there that allows you essentially to delete the app. I don't know why you would want to delete an app. I would imagine that you would want to just use it. But definitely we do have that use case enabled.
So we had a couple questions earlier about having the recordings in Spanish. We will be providing the recordings and try our hardest to summarize it. But unfortunately, couldn't really speak it all in Spanish right now. I think any other questions? All right, here we go. Are there APIs for expense management?
For expense management, I think I'm not clear on what you mean by expense management. There.
Can you resend?
Can you?
Mackenzie, can you resend and expand a little bit?
Yeah.
Next question. Do you have some API that users can enable or disable credit card to do transactions over the internet?
Some API that users can enable to disable credit cards to do transactions. Yes, we do. And this is essentially the VCTC APIs. So with Visa consumer transaction controls, one of the controls that are there is basically you as a consumer get to choose how that payment instrument, or in a sense which channel that payment instrument might be able to be used. So definitely check out the Consumer Transaction Controls API and take a look at the documentation for that one.
All right, Jenny, do you go through a validation process where the FI submits to Visa for validation before put into production? That's a good question.
That's a good question, Jenny. And yes, we do. We absolutely do. So for any financial institution that is interested in partnering with Visa and using our APIs in production, they go through a fairly extensive background check to verify that they're legitimate before we actually move them to production.
What is the difference between CyberSource and Visa Checkout?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
And I guess the short answer would be, so CyberSource is sort of I would almost say CyberSource in itself is a bit of a payment platform that allows you and enables different merchants to essentially accept or transact payments. So they actually do have authorization messages and things like that. So they're on the back end more so than anything, and they're kind of an enterprise-wide or enterprise-level sort of solution. Visa Checkout itself is more so of a wallet, right? So Visa Checkout is targeted specifically towards merchants, essentially enabling small startup merchants who have, you guys may be aware of a term called PII, which is like personally identifiable information. What Visa Checkout allows consumers to do is to store essentially their credit cards in a wallet, which is Visa Checkout, without having those merchants having to store that information on their local system. So it's much more secure for the small startups and for the smaller merchants. So they're kind of they're basically two very different products and kind of two different domains when you really think about it. One's a wallet and one sort of is a payment platform itself.
Alexander, hi, is there a list of additional values for the fields that we receive in the response?
So Alexander, interesting question. When you think about the fields, so if you go to the API reference page on any one of our product pages, the fields are listed there, and for many of the cases we do have the values also listed there. I don't see you don't specify which API you're referring to, but that documentation should be there on our portal.
Do you want to show it really quickly?
Yeah, we can. If you want to go to it.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't have to log in. So if we go to any one of our products. Right, so we have our request attributes, right? And then you scroll down. We have our response attributes, right? So we have all the fields that should be there. And again, I'm not sure which specific product you're referring to, but if you want to ask that question, maybe put it into the chat and we can take a look.
Cool. Thanks. All right, we got 10 minutes or 12 minutes here. Let's see. Is the Visa payment ring used by Olympic athletes available to developers?
Interesting question. I think the short answer is it is not yet in full production yet. So that's a really good question. Even I wanted to know when that thing was coming out.
Do you not have one?
No,
Oh,
unfortunately
okay.
I don't. Though I've seen it. It's a very, very cool device.
It is.
Once it's made available, we'll be sure to let you guys know on developer.visa.com.
Question. This is a good one. If I don't work at a bank, am I still able to use all the Visa developer APIs?
That's a good question. And so the short answer is yes, but it's a little complicated, right? So when you think about the APIs that we offer, many of them require some type of a bank sponsorship. So many of you guys may be familiar with what essentially is the four-party model, and Visa essentially sits at the center of it, right? We cater mostly to merchants, issuers, and acquirers, but we don't just deal with those guys, right? So we're also targeting one of the goals of Visa Developer is really for developers to be able to kind of come up with these very interesting use cases using all of our products and services. So we're interested in developers and as well as integrated service vendors who are not necessarily issuers, acquirers, and merchants themselves, but are building applications and software on Visa's payment rails targeted for any one of those parties. So absolutely, you feel free to actually use those APIs, and you may be allowed to go into production, but part of being vetted for the production, to go into production, would be that you might need a sponsor for some of those APIs.
Julio, do you have a YouTube tutorial? I can answer this one. We actually have several tutorials on our YouTube page, and you can find all of them on our community page. So if you go to community.developer.visa.com, you can also find the community tab on the homepage of the developer page. There is a section for the videos that list all of our tutorials that we have so far, and we do plan on adding more. So stay tuned. Bailey asked, do you have examples where you've integrated Visa Direct APIs like mVisa with frameworks like Spring and Hibernate?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I am not personally aware of any particular examples. So unfortunately, I don't have any example for you right now. So, but it's a very good question.
Carlos, yes, thank you for that recommendation. Adding subtitles, good call. Dan, so is it fair to say that this API suite is designed to augment existing accounts or cards with value-added functionality?
That is a very fair statement. That's a fair statement. And essentially, when you say payment existing accounts and cards, that's very fair. So, and now I'll clarify why I'm saying that it's fair. So many, I know the audience is pretty vast. So Visa itself does not issue cards, though we basically work primarily with issuers who do it. So they license numbers from us, and essentially they control sort of the end user. So they will essentially issue those cards. So absolutely, right? Essentially, it's a value-added service, many of them, on top of the cards that would have been issued by the issuers themselves and licensed from Visa.
Cool. Rakesh, do you have any API like RMS validation based on card?
RMS? I'm not familiar with
yeah. Rakesh, can you resend your question and let us know what you mean by RMS? Okay. Ramel. My company is a 501 organization. I attempted to submit an iOS app to collect donations. It was rejected. Apple requires iOS app to only collect funds outside of the app, such as via Safari, which is a web app, or SMS. Do you have a sample web iOS integration app?
That's a good question. Do we have a sample web iOS integration app? We do not. No, we do not at this time have one.
David, do you plan to provide Swagger files for APIs so that developers can use Swagger CodeGen to create client and server libraries for different languages? That would be awesome.
That's an interesting feature request. It's something that definitely we can actually take down. So again, and if you have feedback like this as well, feel free to submit that to us. We're always interested in getting feedback like this, how we can make the site better and make it more useful for you guys. Great suggestion.
Ed, where do we get the private key for an app?
Where do you get the private key for an app? For that, we'll bring Pooja back, and she can demonstrate that briefly for you.
Pooja.
Okay, hi. So, okay. So when you create your app, say give any app name and select the APIs you want to use, say Visa Direct, and when you come down, there are two ways of getting the private key. If you choose to generate your own CSR, then the private key comes as a download. So just click Create Application, and when you say Continue, there will be an option to download the private key. So this is your private key here.
Great.
So download the private key and then move on.
And if
That's
they
your
don't
private key.
download it?
And if you don't, then the Getting Started guide has instructions to actually generate your own private key. So go to our Get Started guide, which is available under Products, Get Started, and Authentication. So this page gives you all the instructions to generate your own private key. If you do that, then choose the second option on the Create App page and upload your private key, and just keep that aside, because you're going to need that in future for the API calls.
Great.
And I'll just add one piece to that. So if you don't download it at that time because it is the private key, right, you cannot re-download it, which is why she's saying that. So that's why you would either have to recreate the app or basically generate your own. We don't store that after that step.
All right, we got a couple more questions. Going to try to get through all of them. We would like to see an example of APIs ready by Visa.
We have plenty of APIs ready by Visa. Just go to developer.visa.com and you'll see all of the APIs we have ready. Now, so I'm not sure what you meant by that. You may want to resubmit that question.
For Visa-branded company expense cards, there's a Visa expense management platform to track expenses and payments. Just want to know if these APIs have this feature.
There's a Visa expense management platform to track expenses and payments. That I don't believe we do, but I can double check. If you email us, if you really want to know that, please email us and we can follow up on that for you. But I don't think that's the case.
Can it be implemented with C#?
Yes, it can. C#, in fact, is one of the software languages for the sample code that you're able to download on our site.
Do you have any certification program for developers?
So when you say certification, I think what you mean basically, do we allow developers to go into production, right, with any one of our APIs? And again, we do, and there are certain products that you may not need sponsors for that we have, but many of them do. So when you read through the documentation, I would definitely say check out the things to know and the guides pages, which will explain to you which ones should need sponsorship and which ones don't. But definitely, we're interested in working with developers and ISVs who are interested in Visa's APIs to payment enable their applications. Using the VMRC API in the sandbox, can you get real data, or is it limited to test data? I can't seem to get any actual results. I think today, yeah, it's sandbox only today. So it is not, you're not allowed to get real data today. Do you have any APIs like RMS at risk management system based on card scheme?
Got it. Risk management system.
Good question. I think if you look at from our APIs for our risk management system is Visa Risk Manager. So take a look at that actual list of APIs that are exposed there for VRM, and you can do kind of a competitive analysis there, or comparative analysis between the two. Okay.
Sure. Ed, we're not quite sure if you can resend your question. All right. We'll take 2 more questions. Is there any plan to merge the currently existing 2 authentication portals and into one? So 2-way SSL, so mutual authentication, and the XPay token into one. Yep.
Version 3.
Version 3.
Okay. Yeah, so it's coming in version 3 of XPay. PKI.
All right, if you have any more questions, well, we have 2 minutes. Just wanted to remind everyone about the challenges. We have these hoodies and the Echo to give away. Gonna push up the first challenge again. Did we get any questions yet? Oh, we got a question. We'll go to that first. Trying to get the payment challenge running, created an app, but not sure how to fill in all the configuration JSON fields. The one I did have was the cert.
Oh, so this is someone needing assistance with the actual app creation for challenge number 3, right?
Yeah, looks like
app, but not sure how to fill in all the configuration.json fields. But I think part of the challenge is to figure it out, right? So I don't know if we're allowed to help you live on the webcast.
Technically, no. Try to check out the documentations in our Getting Started guide. It should be available, right?
Yeah, it should be there. It should be available on the documentation
page. Dan, how are developers charged? Does the sponsor bank pay per call?
Very good question on pricing options, right? And I think that is something that has to be negotiated. So if you do get a sponsor bank, so each one of them are kind of independent operators. So that would be something that you would need to work out once you build your application, you have a solution, and you want to partner with someone. That is something that will be specific, I think, between you and your partner and Visa.
Cool. Part of what makes the challenges fun is the time limit that we have. So maybe we'll change it up next time. So remember the first challenge, how many payment APIs do we have on the platform? Send that to Visa Developer. Second question, check out the forum. We have a use case that could use, oh, we got a question here. Let's just get that one answered. Is there any documentation, all types of error code regards for MVisa Direct API?
Yeah, if the documentation isn't there, so we do have error codes there. If it's missing for MVisa today, it's something that we probably do need to add. So if you go to the documentation page, the API reference page, you should be able to get to a selection for, so for many of our APIs, we do have it, where sometimes in page or navigating away from there, you might be able to get the full list of error codes that are there. If it is missing for MVisa, let us know, and it's something that we should basically add in there for you.
So that was the last question that we have time for. Thank you, Sean, for taking the time. Thank you for everyone for joining us. If you're sending any other questions now, we'll make sure that we send you a note and answer them. So if you have any questions, send them in or email visadeveloper@visa.com. Thank you, Pooja, for taking the time also to walk us through everything. We're super excited because this is the first of the Visa Coder webinar series. Stay tuned for a lot more to come. And if you have any ideas on what topics you would like us to see, specifically any specific APIs or products or use cases, send it over to visadeveloper@visa.com, and I'm serious that we will take it into consideration because we are doing these for you. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Ricardo, Community Manager at Visa for the Visa Developer Program, and this is Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean Newton. I'm a Product Manager with the Visa Developer Program.
And we are super excited to kick off the Visa Coder series today, getting started with Visa Developer. So let's walk you through a little bit what you're going to go over. We'll start with Visa Developer. What is